This is the Heroic Voice, where I talk to comic book creators, people I've worked with, other interesting people, about the history of comics, superheroes, and the current state of the comic book industry. I also discuss current and upcoming projects, current events, and any other topics my guests might be interested in talking about. So subscribe and hit the like button. Help me grow this channel and promote indie comic book creators, publishers, and other people affiliated with the comic book industry. Your comments are appreciated. Get to it and leave feedback, good, bad, and otherwise. I am your host, Dennis Mallonee, writer, publisher of the Heroic Multiverse, where we spotlight good girls, bad girls, super babes, and superheroics in a classic, kind of golden agey style. Grab some snacks and enjoy. This is the Heroic Voice. All right. This is June 29th, 2024. I'm here for this episode of the Heroic Voice with Andrew Pepoy.
Hey,
I guess point that way.
okay.
Andrew,
Hey,
artist, how would you say your credits on this? What's the
I
most
mean,
important thing you've ever done?
there's my favorite thing I've ever done versus, what I'm probably best known for. What I'm best known for is 18 years on the Simpsons comic book,
Huh?
or 10 years on Fables, or many years doing a variety of things at Archie Comics. But what's my favorite thing is my own creator-owned book, The Adventures of Spoon and Ajax. But we can talk about that more later.
Okay, let's do that. And you've done a little bit of work for Heroic Publishing, right? You did a
Yeah,
Liberty Girl story, a Skater story.
I've done a couple skater stories. One like 30 years ago.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, that only eventually saw print.
Yes, I think it eventually saw print about 15 years later.
Yes, that's right. You did do that. That appeared, I think, in an issue of Icicle, maybe.
I don't
Um,
remember. Yeah,
yeah.
but
And then you did another one that appeared recently in an issue of Tigress that
yes,
took a long time from beginning to end. 'Cause
but it got there.
it did, it got there.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, as I've been doing with other guests, how you got into artwork, how you got into comic books. What about the genre appeals to you?
Well, according to my mom, I always loved superheroes since I was a little kid. So I was, like I remember, watching reruns of Batman after school or watching Super Friends on Saturday mornings and stuff like that when I was a kid. I'd say the real deep dive love of comics started when Superman the movie came out, and I got sick right after that and was stuck home for a week or two from school. And so my mom went to the grocery store and bought me a little 3 pack of 3 Superman comics for $1.
So you're
And
saying that the Superman movie was so bad it made you sick?
right, no, 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 it was so good, but it was also like February, so
Oh,
and I lived in Michigan with lots of snow and cold, so everyone got sick. But yeah, so my mom bought me the 3 pack and I loved it. So she went and bought me another 3 pack and I loved it. And so I started buying more comics, and it was like soon after that I started drawing my own pictures of different superheroes and things like that. And I was probably about 10 at the time, and I'd say within a matter of months, I had decided I was going to be a comic book artist when I grew up.
wonderful. I've
In
heard this
four,
story before. You're not the only one who
yeah.
has this deep secret past. Um, how did you in fact get into comic books? I mean, you were drawing, how did it happen?
Well, I started trying to start drawing my own stories almost immediately, and was a pesky kid. Like apparently, sometime when I was around 11, I remember doing this, and I without telling my parents, I went down to the local newspaper and asked them to print my comic book, which of course they all thought was very cute, but didn't go anywhere. But ended up with getting me an article on me and my comics for the first time when I was 11 years old in the
Oh,
local
that's
paper.
cool.
And when I was 12, I took a summer art class in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which was the big city for us, because I grew up in a small town in Holland, Michigan, about 25 miles from there. And when I took a summer comics art course, summer 1981 from Mike Gustovich. You remember Mike?
I remember Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the final class assignment was to draw the first 3 pages of one of your stories. Well, one of the other kids in the class decided that he was going to run a comic book convention in his garage. So, just like in the old movies, we're going to have a play in the backyard, or, we're going to have a comic
Yeah.
book convention in the garage. And so he said, if you finish that, I'll buy 25 copies of that from you to sell at my convention. And so I finished my first comic, and my dad snuck me into his office building on a weekend so we could run it off on the company copier. And I made my first finished fanzine, and that was just the first of many.
Black and white or color?
Oh, black and white. I mean, this is 1981. There weren't a whole lot of color copiers around back then. Um, but yeah, and I mean, on a side note, that was the beginning of my friend's sort of art support career, you might say. He's still doing similar things. His name's Tom Nagovin, and we've been friends, like I said, since he was 10 and I was 12 in that class. And his latest big project is he just led the restoration of the Malcolm McDowell Caligula movie, which is now playing film festivals around the world. He is
cool.
still doing arts. He didn't really go into the arts literally himself, but he went into the arts in that he keeps making other projects happen. So he started with me, and now he's doing things like this. So it's just sort of a cool thing.
A facilitator.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Yes. And but anyway, yeah. So that was after I did that fanzine. I decided I was going to start doing some others. So I, wandered around the neighborhood, getting the neighbors to subscribe, and and then started doing even more fanzines, which eventually got me hooked into a fanzine network. And it was that fanzine network that eventually led to the contacts that led me to being able to do comics professionally. Either the contacts through there, or I started going to comic book conventions when I was 12 in Grand Rapids and 14 in Chicago, and I started standing in portfolio lines when I was 14 years old, and trying to hustle my stuff. But it was the people I met either doing the fanzines or standing in those portfolio lines who, 8 years later, were the people who helped me get my first jobs at Malibu and Marvel and DC and stuff like that.
First jobs. What were they?
Well, interestingly enough, tomorrow is the 35th anniversary of my first professional art sale. I sold 2 one-page strips to Gary Reed of Caliber Press that he then ran in Caliber Presents. And so yes, so tomorrow is my 35th anniversary in the business.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you, thank you. It was one of the stories, the one that saw print first, so I'm calling that my first sale, was one that was written by Paul Curtis. If you remember Paul,
I do not.
He's unfortunately passed since then, but he was a very big fanzine publisher, and he's also Maggie Thompson's brother, and he was Carol Kalish's assistant at Marvel Comics.
Then maybe I met him. I don't remember.
Yeah, could be.
I loved
But
Carol.
oh, good. Yeah, what?
I loved Carol. She was
Oh,
she was awesome.
yeah, Carol was fantastic.
Yeah.
Someone we really could use in the business now.
Yeah, where do you find another Carol Kalish? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, yeah. So I did all these fanzines and conventions, and met the people, and yeah. So I guess like I said, that was my sort of first break. And by the next summer, I had come back from a semester abroad. I was still in college at the time, and I was way too full of arts and pretension for my own good, wanting to do these great European style graphic novels, and wasn't having much luck with that. And someone at Innovation said to me, "Looks like you'd be a good inker. Do you want to try inking?" I was like, "Sure, I'll give it a shot." And later that same day, I ran across one of my friends, Tim Eldred, who I'd been doing fanzines with. He'd lived in a small town near my small town in Michigan. He was penciling for Malibu, and he said, "Yeah, we need an inker for my next miniseries. You want to try inking?" So 2 people same day saying you want to try inking. So I did the samples, and my parents sprung for a plane ticket out to San Diego for me. This is in the days when it was in a hotel ballroom still.
I remember.
And you could just walk in and buy a
El
ticket.
Cortez.
Yeah, I mean, my parents blew the entire budget on the plane ticket. So I ended up staying at the Y, because I needed a cheap place to stay. But but yeah, I walked in and I didn't get the job at Innovation, but my Tim and I showed my stuff to Malibu, and 20 seconds later, I had my first mini series to ink.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
That's an interesting story. I have a
yeah.
question now because you have a distinctive style and that does lend itself well to inking. It's clean. It's crisp. How long do you think it took you to actually develop that style of artwork that that you know, seems to come really naturally to you now?
What, like my pencils or just the inks?
The inks, the whole shebang, pencils, and the inks on top of those pencils.
Yeah, well, I mean my pencil style actually changed much later, but the inking was developing from the time I learned to work with a brush from Mike Gustovich when I was 12 years old. I was very lucky, unlike most kids who didn't, most guys didn't even, wouldn't even know that you're supposed to start inking with a brush until you're much, much older. I'd learned to work with a brush when I was 12 and started practicing from that point on. And I think that's, I started getting nibbles when I was as young as 16 from some indie publishers and stuff. And so I guess just, it's just lots of practice over the years when I was young. And from then on, I mean, like I look at my first DC job. My first DC job was the 1991 Flash Annual, and I look at that the quality of the inks on that, and I'm just like, why did anyone hire me? But so it's still something that I'd say I'm still learning and developing here. 42 years since I first learned to work with a brush.
Yeah, you never stop learning. There are always
No,
tricks that you never twigged to before.
right. Like I just picked up a new tip from Mark Schultz at HeroesCon 3 weeks ago, and I'm so it's like, okay, great, let's go try that. So,
Yeah. And then some artists settle on their favorite, whether it's a pen or a brush that they like to use. This is getting on the technical side now, but I mean, do you have a favorite implement, a favorite tool?
I prefer a good brush, although finding a good brush is getting harder and harder because the quality's getting worse. But I mean, I can do either pen or brush inking, depending on what it calls for. So like my approach to inking was often very different than most guys. Most, like a lot of the guys seem to have, they had their look, and they put that look on top of the penciler, no matter what the pencils look like. For me, my approach always was to make the penciler look as good as they could in a style that best fit them. So
Yeah,
I would usually adapt my style to fit what they were doing. So like, if I'm inking Mark Buckingham on Fables, I'm doing like Mike Royer type brushwork and stuff like that,
the
or
thick,
Steve Rude or something. Huh?
the Mike Royer is like thick kind of lines. I remember that from the work he
It,
did on Jack.
it can be, but there's also a finesse to it as well. There's a real
Uh,
nice finesse to it as well if you really look at it. And I would, so it's not just thick line, but it's this very lush, fluid, very brushy line.
Maybe
Um,
that's what I'm talking about because
yeah,
thick isn't really the right word for what Mike did.
right,
Um,
right, right. But it was a really nice, lush brush line.
mhm.
And while on the other hand, if I'm inking like Eric Shanauer or Didier Tarquin, those two guys I worked pretty much entirely with dip pens, crow quills, and things like that,
The
because that's
delicate lines.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what it called for. I mean, I can do delicate lines with a brush, but sometimes you change the tool because you need that certain kind of snap that a pen gives versus the kind of snap a brush gives.
Mhm.
And so that's like I remember Eric Larson looking at my portfolio once and saying it looked like there were 12 different inkers in it. Um,
There were.
because yeah, well, I mean, it's just different approaches,
Mhm.
and I mean, there, it's like, and so I try to bring out the best in a penciler, depending on what their style is. I don't want to like bury them in my look unless that's what the editor tells me to do. Because I mean, like I've had jobs where I was inking, John Bogdanove, and they told me make it look like Scott Williams is inking Jim Lee, so I imposed that look. Yeah,
Okay.
well, that's what they wanted,
Okay.
and so or yeah, or Steve Sadowski, even further away from that, Steve Sadowski pencils, if you know Steve's work, and they wanted it to look like Jim Lee inked by Scott Williams. And it's like I can do that, but usually I'm gonna like usually when I ink Steve, Steve likes my inks because I still make him look like Steve, So
Okay. Projects you have looking back, any particularly favorite ones that you really enjoyed doing? I mean, I'm not talking about working with pencilers. I'm talking about the project itself. Uh,
um Well, I mean, a lot of times for me, as like when I was working as an inker, it was about the penciler. The project wasn't so big to me. I mean, there were times where yes, it was cool, like when I did like X-Men: Children of the Atom, but that was also both the project and I was inking Steve Rude.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it was both things, but it's a lot of times it's about the penciler. I mean, like, was I super excited to be working on Aliens? Not particularly. I've never even seen the movie. But I was inking Dave Ross, and that was fun. So for me, it's more about who I'm inking. I mean, although there's times like Archie comics is always fun. The Simpsons was fun. I mean, that was the great thing about working on the Simpsons is it was just always they were just fun comics, and it helped. Like pretty much, they had no bad pencilers. All the pencilers that I was working with on The Simpsons were really fun pencilers and good stuff to work with.
Good
And
storytelling. I remember The Simpsons,
good,
at least the early ones. The stories were told very well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, well, and for a long time, like when I first started working on The Simpsons, everything had to look like Matt was inking it, like that sort of that dead weight pen line that Matt
Yeah.
would use.
Hmm.
And 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 so I didn't get a ton of work at that because I'm more of I am more of a brush guy. I could adapt, but I was certainly still better with a brush. And then an issue came along where they wanted it to look like it was an homage to Carl Barks, the Carl Barks Duck comics,
Okay,
and
there's a
and so
challenge.
right. So well, here's the thing. I got that call because I have apparently this happened 25 years ago, but apparently this reputation still sticks with me. I did a test for Carl Barks once for a project,
Oh yeah.
and the test was draw the ducks, and if you liked your ducks, you're in. And I did the test, and he liked my ducks, my pencils and inks on the ducks, and that reputation has gotten me a number of jobs over the years because apparently that was a big thing. And I mean, unfortunately, the project never happened. Carl was like 101 years old or something when I did the test, and as I always say, darn that Carl, he up and died on us at 102. So the project never happened, and but it led to me people heard Carl liked my duck, so I got to ink a Carl Barks cover that they found. They found a penciled cover that hadn't been finished. They asked me to ink it. I got to pencil and ink an Uncle Scrooge cover because of that. And I guess that's probably why they called me from Bongo to do this Barks homage issue. And apparently Matt popped into the office because Matt wasn't in the offices at the comics every day because he was busy doing the TV show. But Matt popped into the office and saw the inks and liked them. And the guys were like, "Can we please keep using brush inkers on this stuff?" And Matt was like, "Okay." At least that's the way it was reported to me. And so from that point on, I got a lot more work out of them because I was starting to be able to do the really thick, snappy brush, lush brush lines on The Simpsons.
Okay, let's talk about what people should be looking for, projects you have on tap, stuff that's coming up,
Oh, okay. Well,
or
sure.
projects that you've done that you want to talk about that are yours, not somebody
Well, that
else's.
are mine entirely. Well, I mean, for about the last 30 years, I've been doing various stories of Simone and Ajax from the adventures of Simone and Ajax.
That makes
And
sense. Tell us about
yes, well,
those who do
Simone,
not know.
right. For those who do not know, Simone is a 20 something girl who loves to go off on adventures, and her best pal is a 3 foot tall cartoony dinosaur, Ajax, who joins her on these adventures. I can send them to any time or place I feel like sending them. It's full of cheesy jokes and bad puns, and and if you just and it's inspired by some of these great old adventure comics like the Carl Barks Duck comics, Roy Crane's Wash Tumbs Captain Easy, things like that, and just great old adventure movies.
Open it up.
And
Open it up.
yeah,
Open it up. Let
yeah.
people
So
see
like say for this book, we have a pirate adventure.
cool.
See that? So we got
Mhm.
pirate stuff going on. We have a Western story.
Ah, yes. Cowboy
We have
hat.
cowboy hat.
Cowboy
Yeah, I
hat.
got. We have a Transylvanian adventure,
All right.
monsters, and all that fun stuff. And we have finally a hard-boiled private eye story because who doesn't want to see a little tiny dinosaur in a fedora talking tough?
Yeah. I mean, it makes
Yeah,
sense to me.
yeah.
Where do people find these Simone and Ajax volumes?
They can go to one of two places. They can go to pepoy.com, my last name, Pepoy.com, and click the buy books button, or they can go to simoneandajax.com and click the buy books button. And you can certainly find out more about the characters at both those sites. And in fact, say for this book, which is their latest book, this came out 2 years ago. There are free previews of each of the four stories that you can read the first handful of pages of on the Simone and Ajax website.
What are you working on now?
I am working I'm mainly working on two things. I am doing a hardcover collection of all of the 90s black and white Simone and Ajax stories. So I'm restoring all of that material, which has proved to be a much bigger job than I ever expected. I did it on craft tint. Do you know DuoShade craft tint board?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the originals have all deteriorated to the point where with the chemicals that I can't use them anymore. So I'm working from copies. So I'm having to go in and scan them really high res and clean up all the grit, including between some of the little lines of the pattern.
I've done that. I had to do that with the black and white stuff that we published in the 90s when I wanted to put color in them. That is a pain.
Yes. Yeah, well, I'm keeping it in black and white as is, but it'll be a nice 160-page collection of all of the old black and white stuff of Simone and Ajax. And you can still pre-order that at both those sites, pepoy.com and simoneandajax.com. So that will be coming by the end of the year. I'm getting close to the end of the restoration, getting ready to send it off to the printer. The other thing I'm doing is I'm penciling and inking an adaptation of George MacDonald's Phantastes, which was a 19th century fantasy novel that inspired Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and things like that. And I'm on the final issue right now, so I'm hoping it finally wraps up.
It's been a long time coming, as I recall.
It has been. I mean, the last few years have been interesting. Just like I keep getting COVID and other fun bugs and stuff, and just keep getting slowed down. I seem to keep catching everything, so that's been slowing me down. I've also started doing Archie covers again for various limited edition packagers. So, like, say for example, I did this Josie in Outer Space thing for the Josie and the Pussycat 60th anniversary special. Yep, there's Josie, Melody, Valerie, all that fun stuff. Because Dan DeCarlo is my number one influence. And you can see that.
Oh, what a wonderful artist. I mean,
yeah.
Bob Montana is number one, but then, Dan comes after
right.
him.
Right. And then, or like, here's another one I did for the Archie Christmas special and stuff, with Betty and Veronica and Sabrina. I mean, Dan, I got to know Dan a little bit in the last couple of years of his life. And he was just such a great guy. And, was supposed to work with him on some stuff. That's one of my great regrets is that didn't happen.
Any chance that Katie Keene book will ever see print? The one that you...
Oh, the second series of Katie Keene?
Yeah.
Because the first series of Katie Keene is back in print, collecting all of my short stories from Archie and Friends, and plus the 24 bonus page, origin story of Katie Keene. That is available as a paperback from Archie right now. It's got sort of a blue cover with a Bill Wogan drawing on the front, and the first half of the book is more classic Katie Keene. The second half of the book is my complete run. So that's available. But as far as the second series of Katie Keene that I was working on, I doubt it will ever be. I unfortunately doubt it will ever be finished. I would love to, but I don't think Archie's interested in ever finishing it.
Oh, it's a shame.
Yeah,
we would love to see that.
Yeah, we had 5 issues written and penciled, a bunch of them lettered, and I think I was working on the inks on number 3, and out of a 6-issue miniseries. So it was actually very, very far along. So
yeah. A lot of stuff gets put on the shelf.
Yeah.
So you've done a little bit of work. You've done a little bit of work with me, right?
I have, yes. Started 30 years ago.
Yeah, with a skater story.
Yes.
Skater and Icicle and Ice Star in it. Because I remember that one, Ice Star is trying to convince Icicle she needs to go to college. So she takes her to meet an old friend of his who also happens to be an Olympic level skater, right? Who's a Caltech professor who skates.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. And I don't remember the details of that story because nothing much actually happens in there. It was supposed to be a setup for a future story that we ended up doing many years later than that.
About 20 years later.
Yeah, I actually have that. It's in this issue of Tigress, right?
Right.
And here we are, right, with Jimmy Tucker, the skater, right?
Yep, yep. There's my pencils and inks on the skater, and
And
then
there's the
your design over on the other side.
that's my drawing, my original design. And as it says in here, this was originally meant for Murphy Anderson, right? Hence the slim figure, the curls, all that curly hair up there,
Hmm.
right? But Murph passed away before it could get going, and it just sat on the shelf for a while. And then I realized that you were probably the right choice for this, given, the kind of work that you did. Because Skater needs to be, she's really kind of a silly character. She scoots around on ice skates, right? On concrete.
Powered ice skates.
Yeah. Uh, and she has the ability to neutralize inertia and impart momentum to things, which is how she can skate. You know,
Okay.
the friction goes away. So that turned out
And
pretty well. And we're
yeah,
going to do another story at some point because this one ends on a cliffhanger with her getting zapped
yeah,
by the villain. Right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and yes, I know I've been saying for a while we'll get to that, and that is my plan. That the next thing I will do as soon as this Fantasties miniseries is over, with, that I will be the next thing up will be finally doing the next Skater story.
Yeah, and we're going to do an Icicle crossover in there. Icicle actually appears in that story, the
Okay.
one from the Tigress issue, but she's not named. She's in her secret identity, right?
Oh, okay.
You remember, right? One of the students who's working with Jimmy Tucker, the skater, keeps saying, this would work with Cold. Cold is cool. Uh, and
I'm
Jimmy's going, why is she always going on about Cold? Right. So
I'm glad you remember that because that was, I mean, it's still at this point we're talking like 8 or 9 years ago that
it was a while ago, yeah.
story, yeah.
You
And
also did a Liberty Girl story,
yeah,
which appeared in this issue of Anthem.
yeah, Liberty Girl's one of my favorites of your characters.
And this is the story where she meets. Oh, that's not good.
The page is
This
missing.
issue, this copy has a blank page.
Oh no.
Ah, that's so strange. Okay, I'm going to have to check the other copies that I have in restart. But anyway, the Cactus Man appears here. You can see
Yes,
him.
and I had to draw
He's
horses.
the embodiment of the Saguaro Desert. Yeah. And he's going to be making a comeback in Liberty Girl number 7, um, which isn't being drawn yet, but I plotted it out. You won't be drawing him because you're not drawing Liberty Girl right now.
Okay.
But
I'm,
you do want to draw Chrissy Claus.
I would, yeah. Like I know you and I have talked about that on and off for the last couple of years, and you know, time permitting, time and schedule permitting, down the road, I would certainly be interested in doing that, and so hopefully that'll happen.
For those who don't know, Chrissy is Santa's little elfin granddaughter. She is the daughter of Santa's son and a queen of fairy, which means she not only has Santa Claus powers, she also has some Fey abilities as well. So she's pretty dangerous, but she's sweet and cute and adorable.
Yeah,
So yeah,
in a mischievous kind of way.
yes, very mischievous, very mischievous. She's a little bit naughty, but she's mostly very nice.
Yes.
That's how we explain it.
Yeah.
So okay, we're running close to our half an hour here. I want to ask you, is there anything you want to talk about at this point that we have not discussed?
Well, I will, just mention that, once again, that if anyone wants to check out Simone and Ajax, please check out pepoy.com, or simoneandajax.com. You can sign up for my mailing list there so you can find out what it is I'm working on, because other things come along, other Archie covers, other indie covers, other little jobs. And I'll just mention that, if you like your, cute girl adventurer type things, I have another project that will be coming out probably next year, that you can read about at pepoy.com, named Monica Moon, sort of a retro retro outer space story.
Wow.
Fins, spaceships, and bubble helmets, and fun stuff like that. And I have begun some work on that already. There was a story of hers that appeared several years ago in a self-published book that I did, my first Spicy Tomato Studios release, and and now I'm going to be doing a full-length graphic novel with her that should be coming out and available through a Kickstarter that I'll be doing probably spring. My plan is spring of next year.
That sounds like fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. I've had a number of people ask me about it. I have there's a friend of mine who has become like the world's biggest Monica Moon fan, who is investing in the project that's helping me make it happen. So I'm really appreciative of him because that's what is helping me get it off the ground. And so, yeah, that's why I say sign up for the mailing list at pepoy.com or follow me on Facebook. I have a fan page, just facebook.com/Andrew Pepoy. You can follow me on Instagram at Andrew Pepoy. Same thing at Threads. I'm on this new art focused social media site Kara at Pepoy. So just try to follow me on social media, and you can find out what else I'm working on, because there's gonna be some fun stuff, including stuff for you at Heroic with at least this skater story.
The Chrissy Claus book, just so people know, we envision as sort of an homage to those old Dell giants, right? Those 80 pages that had the stories, the games, the puzzles in it.
Right.
Right. And that's what we want to do. We want to produce a Chrissy Claus book that could pass as one of those old Dell, 25-cent, 80-page giants from back in the day.
Right.
So that's what we have in mind. Also, I should mention that if you want to visit the Heroic Publishing website, you can do that too. That's at heroicmultiverse.com, or just do a Google search for Heroic Publishing and you can find us there. We're also on Facebook, on Twitter, social media, all around the thing. And hit the like and subscribe buttons, because we could really use your feedback. And next week we'll be doing another one. I can't remember who is our guest next. I'm blanking. Oh, it's Henry Martinez. Henry Martinez is going to be our guest.
Okay.
Andrew, thank you. Thank you very much. I hope people enjoyed this. And do visit Andrew's websites, find out what he's up to. And I'm going to say, good night. Thank you for being here. It's very much appreciated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you, Dennis.
Likewise.